So thank you for being here today. I just want to give clarity to a few issues that have been in the news in the past week, and then I'll deal with some political matters since this is a party press conference. So the first issue I think that was misrepresented or the reporters were not clear on when I spoke here the last time was the issue of the application by Repsol to have the Kanaku block license renewed. So because of that misinterpretation, somehow it was reflected in some of the news reports that, first of all, we are inclined to give the license. I said no such decision has been made at this point in time. And that I gave the variables that will be used by the decision makers on both sides in favor of a new license or working directly with them or not giving a license for the block and retaining that block and then putting it out to auction. I spoke about their claim that the $500 million was spent and they have 3D seismic for the area. But I did not say that should they get a new license that they can then, and then they move to production under the new license, that they will be able to claim the $500 million as exploration costs. As far as we're concerned at this point in time, the license, the property is back with the government of Guyana, given that the time the prospecting license has expired. If we exercise that option and no decision has been made to work back with them for the same area, it will not be a renewed license, but a new license. And so I point at the new license will be under the new regime, and should they move to production under a new license, only exploration costs in the current period under the new license will be considered as part of the cost back. So the reason I mentioned the $500 million was for the benefit of people like Glenn Lal and the others who keep saying and behaving as though this is a risk-free environment. And I was pointing out that should they not move to production as is under the prospecting license, they don't exercise the option to move to a production license, and the prospecting license expires, as in this case with the Kanaku block, then they lose all of the money, the exploration money. And I was pointing out that they claim they spent $500 million US. So effectively, they've lost all $500 million US dollars, $500 million in this case. And therefore, it is not a risk-free activity. Because just imagine a local company losing 100 billion Ghana dollars or 500 million US dollars because they believe that they behave as though this is a risk-free type of activity. And so the government is obligated, when it balances the interests between the country's stake and the investor's stake, it has to take that into consideration, the high risk involved, as is demonstrated in this case through a practical example where they have lost 500 million. So I hope that that clarity is going to be reflected in the stories. So Kaichur News story says if the government renews the license, they would have $500 million the company will claim. It's not what I said. That's the first issue. The second issue has to do with the Chinese landing matter. I spoke with Minister Teixeira. The report has been completed and it has been sent to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. That report, Minister Teixeira said, will be made public shortly. And then you will see the findings of the report, which I will not go into today, and how they arrive at those findings and what the formal response of the government is. The third thing is there's been some confusion and a lot of talk about consultations on amending the Amerindian Act. Now, if you recall, when APNU said they wanted to pursue this exercise, both the Amerindian Act and changes to the Indigenous Peoples Commission, the position we took in opposition that we will, if they try to undermine land rights and other features of the 2006 Act, then we will oppose it. But we will keep an open mind if there are additional benefits that could be brought to Amerindian communities. In our manifesto, we said we will pursue a revision of the Amerindian Act after a process of extensive public consultations. The Ministry of Amerindian Affairs was tasked with coming up for the cabinet with a framework and a mechanism through which those consultations, framework for the consultations and a mechanism through which those consultations will be effected. And they have had preliminary discussions. We intend to fully involve the National Tushau's Council in those discussions before that proposal goes to the Cabinet of Guyana, which is a proposal as to how the consultations will be done, the mechanism, and, well, I don't need to tell you much about how extensive it shall be, because we have already determined that it would have to be very widespread. So there has been a lot of confusion, obviously because the ministry held an engagement before the NTC about the revision of the Amerindian Act. So there's been a confusion as to whether we have started that process. That's a third issue that I've seen in the media that I thought we needed clarity on. Now, as I said before, the People's Progressive, this is a party press conference. And I've been tracking over the last several weeks an intensification of comments about the PPP's democratic credentials, and a number of people, known characters and media outfits, about our governance under the PPP, and the PPP's commitment to inclusion and progress, its track record on progress in Guyana. So I think today, it's not that we never had these comments before. They've always been in the public domain, but sometimes they wane and then they intensify. And so I've had a task for the past maybe 20 odd years, over 20 years, in various capacities, but mainly as president and general secretary, leader of the opposition and general secretary of this party, to try to give our perspective on a lot of these issues. But in spite of all of these explanations, the matters keep resurfacing, not in any refined form or format taking account the explanations, but in the same crude way as though nothing has happened in 20 odd years in this country, and that the people of this country are not aware of these matters. So I saw at Starbuck News, I've seen a lot of this happening. A Starbuck News editorial speaking about the PPP credentials. And to its credit, it says, in other words, the ruling party too has some anti-democratic behavior to its account, even if not nearly as egregious as that of the opposition. So let me give you a couple of examples that they use. That Ramatar prorogued the parliament in 2014. They may not like it, but it was never unconstitutional. Two, that the PPP illegally was clinging on to AFC Linden seat following the 2006 poll. This matter went to court, the court ruled on it, but even if the seat at the allocation of the regional level had changed, given that our national system is one of PR, it wouldn't have changed the allocation of seats in the parliament, so it didn't matter. If the seat had gone to the AFC, there would have been an adjustment at the national level. It wouldn't have changed any allocation of seat in the parliament. And these that the PPP kept saying that the 2015 elections were stolen. So you'd recall me going out and saying to people, the reason we did 80 meetings, why we lost the elections. We filed an election petition, it's true, because the parliamentary seat in Region 8 by one vote. We won at the regional level, but we lost at the parliamentary seat by one vote, and they did not give a recount, although a request for recount went in before the constitutionally due time. So there were several things that where we were shut out from. Nevertheless, we went on, we moved on, we went into Parliament, we fought from the opposition. So those were the three things about our so-called anti-democratic credentials. Now let me make this clear. If there wasn't the People's Progressive Party in this country, there wouldn't have been any democracy. Because there are two periods that APNU have been in government. The period for 28 years ending 1992, and every election prior to that was rigged and been documented internationally as being rigged. Every single election that the PPP participated in and won in the period between 1992 and 2015, we had international observers, and they all reported on every one of those elections as being free and fair. APNU had another 5 years, and they tried to steal the elections again. So you can talk about anti-democratic behavior of the PPP and cite a couple of examples that they did, which have explanations for. But one thing you can't get away from is a track record of the PNC. And so when we say that it's a precondition for any talks between PNC, that they have to acknowledge that history, that the whole world knows, because if they don't acknowledge that history, then they don't believe they did anything wrong. Up to today, they talk about SOPs and the 2020 elections being won by the PNC. Rickford Burke Forum in Washington would say they were cheated in the 2020 elections. So our insistence as a political party on their acknowledgement that they have sought throughout their entire history to steal elections is an essential prerequisite for moving forward. And a repudiation of that sort of behavior is the basis on which any foundation for closer work at the level of the executive has to be based on that. So you can cite President Ramatar for proroguing the parliament in 2014, which was catered for by the Constitution. But Granger assault, his raping of the Constitution, is now a matter for that has been aired adequately in the country, and you can't see that for what it is. Granger unilaterally appointed a chair of GCOM after 25 years of a common understanding by all the political parties in this country of the provisions of the Constitution relating to appointment and the process through which you have to go through to have a chairman of the Elections Commission appointed. He ignored the Constitution of Guyana, unilaterally appointed the partisan with the intent of rigging the election, and only had it not been for the CCJ, because the local courts didn't help, had it not been for the CCJ, we would not have had his removal. The same thing happened with the no confidence motion. Again, the local court, the Court of Appeal, did not help with their ruling. But Granger violated the Constitution again. So let us make it clear about democracy and the PPP. We have always led the fight again for democracy. Now there are lots of other people who have fought for democracy who are not PPP, But as a political party, if we didn't lead that fight, they could not have withstood the brunt of PNC assault. In the 90s and again in 2020, we led that fight. There are others who participated in the fight, and we have acknowledged them, and we've thanked them for that fight. But had it not for the PPP, this country would not have been living in freedom. So you can write 1 million editorials about the PPP and its anti-democratic behavior, and they can talk all sorts of nonsense. But that's the history of this country, and we will never allow anyone to change that. Never allow anyone to change that, because it's the fact, and it could be demonstrated. The second issue that we see a lot of distortion around is this narrative that Afro-Guyanese are excluded. And so in today's newspaper, Vincent Alexander, who is part of that group that pushes this narrative, says that 40% of the population or more are excluded from decision making in this country. Now, clearly, if you look at this, you will see a pattern of behavior. And this is to justify somehow an engagement where President Ali must meet with the PNC or the opposition, because somehow, if he doesn't meet with the opposition, Afro-Guyanese interests cannot be accommodated in this government, which is a false narrative. So I want to go through a number of things. For example, when the last government decided to shut down the sugar industry, did they, because Vincent Alexander says, well, the population is excluded from decision making, 40%, and their representatives, basically what he's saying, the representatives are. Did the sugar workers decide this? Did the PPP have a voice in this decision? Did Afro-Guyanese have a voice in this? The supporters of the PNC have a voice? No. The decision was made by a small group of people called the Cabinet at State House. So there was, this is APNU, an important decision. The people of the country didn't make, nobody participated on this. When they decided on Amerindian and sent home 7,000 workers, put them on the breadline. When they decided to get rid of 2,000 Amerindians or stop the land titling process, how was the decision made? Was there inclusion in that decision making? When they decided to remove the grant for the school children, was the opposition consulted on that decision? When they decided to remove free water for the pensioners, and I'm talking about everybody, because this including things that affected Afro-Guyanese. When they decided to remove the free water from the pensioners. When they decided to increase the taxes. So when you're elected in a representative democracy, you are elected by the people to serve their interests. And you have 5 years to demonstrate to them that you will work in their interests. Now, APNU did not work in the interests of 90% of Guyana and people of every race. The 10% that they work with in their interests were the rich and connected cabal of this country, who are today some of the so-called haters of the PPP because they've been excluded. They can't get the suite of government anymore. But people of every race was affected. When APNU decided not to do any housing in region or land in Region 10 in Linden, but gave the land to Lowenfield and to the Figueras and to Amanza Walton, all of them big tracts of land, but no ordinary Lindener got any land. Who made that decision? Where was Vincent Alexander at that time? He was in IPADG through the Coffee 250 that excluded the other Afro-Guyanese organizations because Granger and the others gave them money. And if you see the Rastafarian Council, they said they were excluded because they didn't want to campaign for the 2020 elections. So when Vincent Alexander writes about this exclusion, he's not talking about the exclusion of Afro-Guyanese, because today Afro-Guyanese have a better chance of getting a house lot than under APNU because they didn't develop house lots. Afro-Guyanese have a better chance of getting a job today than under APNU. They have a better chance of getting some assistance from this government with their children, getting back the grant, etc. So it's not exclusion of Afro-Guyanese, it's exclusion of this cabal that has benefited from perks of government. So 100 million per year going to IPADG at Vincent Alexander chairs, but we have already seen not a cent went back to ordinary Afro-Guyanese. That is what they want inclusion for. Not to help people, but to help themselves. But they're creating this narrative now that we must buy into. We must acknowledge that they are the ones who we have to work through. Never mind, many of them are corrupt. Never mind, they have no interest for the development of our country or Afro-Guyanese, but the PPP must work through them. So Starbuck News says this is a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. So President Ali must not meet with the citizens. He has to go through Norton. Utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. That we must knowingly accept that they have no interest in developing Guyana or even Afro-Guyanese communities, but we must work through them and not work directly in these communities. And the People's Progressive Party, not President Ali, has taken that position. So President Ali has made it clear he will meet any time with the opposition when the matters relate to the performance of his constitutional duties as president. But if you want to talk power sharing, etc., you got to talk to the People's Progressive Party about this. And our position has been clear. Our position has been clear on this matter. That is why we put a paper out in the past. We're not going to be duped. We're not starry-eyed. We know what it's about. You have to demonstrate exclusion, and you cannot demonstrate exclusion by a PPP government because Afro-Guyanese have made the most progress, as all of Guyana has made, under PPP governments, and we can demonstrate that. So you build a false premise, and on that basis you're trying through the back door to get part into the executive, but not to help the people you claim you represent, but to help yourselves. We're not part of that scam. We're not going to be part of that scam. So the Burkes and the others who are perpetrating this are not going to get us to be part of this. So in our engagements with the international community, this is why they're finding it so difficult, because in our engagements with the international community, we're saying, hold on a minute. This country is made up of people of every race. Look at the composition of the public sector. Look at the initiatives the government has done on housing, on the children, on education, on health care. They benefit all of our people. Look at the composition of the executive. Look at the composition of our legislature and the judiciary. They reflect their country. Unlike even in the United States of America, we have a more balanced, in fact, by far, more balanced structure here than most countries in the world in terms of all of our people sharing benefits. And many of those who have raised this issue in the past from the international community, when presented with facts and figures, they're now moving away from that jaundice view, the prejudice view. So Rickford Burke and the others, their biggest nightmare is the PPP being able to meet with the congressmen and present facts and figures, because they go and present their bunch of lies about exclusion. That's what they talk. The exclusion is their backdoor into getting into power. And so we will continue to expose this. So a big hullabaloo over the week about President Ali not accepting the U.S. offer to mediate between the two parties. So again, the narrative by the Mosleys and others, and even the Mara Waves. Every few weeks, they come back to the same thing. Exclusion, although we have pointed out 1 million times that there is no exclusion, and about the parties are race-based parties. We have demonstrated the only party to be a multi-ethnic party. We have demonstrated they ignore the facts, the results of the local government elections, where we won in Madhya, in Bartika. We won in many parts of the country where Afro-Guyanese predominate, or the Indo-Guyanese are a minority, significant minority. We've demonstrated that. Progress in New Amsterdam, in Linden, in Georgetown. Totally ignore that. And as though the narrative has not changed from the past, because that narrative suits the opposition. And so Gordon Mosley interviews the ambassador, and he says, oh, the citizens of the country are not seeing the benefit of the oil and gas industry. And the ambassador says, right, I would say do as much as you can to show the citizens that there is an impact. So there are things happening, but maybe people don't see it all the time. New roads being built, there are new buildings going up, and there is a lot happening in the infrastructure area. But there is a lot happening in education and health areas as well. And she goes on to speak about that. So there's a lot happening. That narrative speaks about progress in Guyana. It doesn't go well for Norton and for Mosley and the others, so that doesn't get highlighted. That part doesn't go well for them. They spoke about returning Mosley, returning to the area of crime and security, the DA office. Is it still fully functional in Guyana? Ambassador, it is more than fully functional. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. We have a full-time attaché, and just this week, another agent arrived, so we are very happy. Guyana has been asking us for additional help in that area because they really want to get a handle on being a transit country for drugs. And I know aerial interdiction is important to Guyana, maritime interdiction. So having a full DA unit is terrific, and we're happy about that. That doesn't suit their narrative. So it comes to this other issue now. So they're talking about democracy, and Gordon Mosley speaks about something on democracy. And then I'm just choosing a part from the ambassador. It was tough, as you mentioned, but we joined many international actors. I think there were over 130 countries that ended up weighing in on the election. And I was just thrilled that the result was that the people of Guyana were listened to, and that every vote was counted and democracy prevailed. An inconvenient narrative again to them, because this thing about rigged elections, ambassador here saying democracy prevailed, 130 countries weighed in, etc. And then I'm very pleased to see so many parties talking about the importance of including all the people of Guyana in this new day. So the PPP spoke about inclusivity in our manifesto. This is not a word coined by the opposition or the Americans. If you look at all of our documents, we spoke about inclusion. It's in black and white in our manifesto, because that is how we work, and we have demonstrated that. The ambassador says this. So another thing they would do is they will go, and if there is a USAID report or anything else, they would take out that section. The Morale Waves has this proclivity of doing this, and take out the word inclusivity and say, US government calls on Guyana to be more inclusive. But they're repeating what we have said. As the ambassador said, we're talking about it. It isn't that the US government says you must include APNU in your government. The US government has never said that about inclusion of APNU in the executive. They would not recommend that, because they have, between the Democrats and the Republicans, even more entrenched differences. They wouldn't even, they have not recommended that to us in any one of the engagements we have had. They've simply mentioned inclusive government because we have said that ourselves. So it's nothing new. And then Gordon keeps insisting. He goes on and on and on. And then the ambassador says, talking about, because there are two sides, you're talking one Guyana on one side, and you're talking about discrimination in one Guyana, and parts of Guyana not getting a fair share of the economic boom, etc. This is Gordon Mosley repeating the APNU line. And then the ambassador says, the US stands ready to help in that role for sure. I think open dialogue and frank discussion are very important, and I think bringing the people together is key to success, the ultimate success of Ghana. So certainly the US stands ready to do whatever we can to bring all parties together. There's no offer to us, and if the US will not offer anything, or has never offered to bring people together to discuss power sharing or inclusion of these people who are making politics out of inclusion. So all week long, I see a big debate about President Ali not accepting the US offer. This is not a US offer. This is Gordon Mosley trying to get the ambassador over and over to say, oh, the US would help. And who would say, which person, if asked, are you going to be helpful in trying to bring people together? What would they say? No. They would say yes. It's a courtesy. But there's no offer to do that, but they made it look like Ali rejects some offer from the US government. And suddenly, the haters of Sarah Lynch have suddenly found her to be this glowing, wonderful ambassador who's promoted. Now, this big bad Ali has now rejected the offer from the US. This is how narratives get reworked. This is happening all the time, and it's a clever reworking you over and over and over again, not deviating from it. I said, be warned, congressmen and others. You're dealing with a criminal. You're dealing with a criminal who is wanted in this country for extortion. So people who lobby without being registered. 3, I urge people to write the congressmen and the others to point out. 4, we're taking some formal steps to ensure that the Justice Department knows about this. So he's upset about that because he is a con man and he's making money from these ventures. I didn't say the congressmen collecting money for taking the pictures. Rick Fordberg does that. He sells the people access. So he says a congressman may come and engage people and he collects money on the side because he's a con man. That is exactly what he does. So he has this thing of issuing all these statements all week. All right? So he says 2 top U.S. government officials told him. Well, 2 top U.S. government officials already told me too that he is, they're examining him for criminality and for ripping people off. So he is part of that, what I mentioned to you, the Kool-Aid gang, the people who profiteer from, who have no interest in Afro-Guyanese development. When they were there, not a thing was done, as I pointed out with IPADG. They're concerned about the decade of people of African descent and what did they do to enhance any benefits to people of African descent, if not to take away the rights. I know because a lot of people, when they banned their used tires, people came in, the taxi drivers, they're Afro-Guyanese taxi drivers. When they took away jobs, some people came here. When they increased the taxes on miners, street taxes, and the mining sector went into doldrum, tens of thousands of miners were Afro-Guyanese who lost their everything. They didn't care about that at that time. And who was part of the economic decision-making then to ensure that people's interests were taken consideration of. So that happens. Then I noticed a new thing. So I mentioned already that it irks a lot of people when President Ali goes out to meet ordinary people, because he said he's honest enough to say it's a good political strategy, and it's a good political strategy to meet people directly, because if their leaders keep telling them one thing, the leaders say, don't apply for scholarships from the government, like Annette Ferguson and the others who are pushing this line. But they got the scholarships from the last government. They told people don't apply. We went on the ground, we said apply. 17,000 people are studying now. Maybe half are Afro-Guyanese. You ask Professor over there. If they had listened to their leaders in this so-called representative democracy and didn't apply, they wouldn't have had a scholarship today. And so we have to go directly to people to talk to them, because their leaders want them to not to get any benefit, so then they can claim that they are excluded. And we point out also to the international community that in their place, in APNU's case, it's not just about elitism in relation to ordinary Afro-Guyanese, but it's racism. Indo-Guyanese probably, when they sent home those sugar workers, you know what they were saying? That if we take them out, Ramjatan basically said that in Parliament one day. He said they will migrate. They would leave the country, because their plan was to close down the sugar industry so the workers wouldn't find jobs. They migrate, so it affects the electoral demographics. It's called ethnic sterilization, basically. That's what they were aiming for. But nobody had anything to talk about inclusion or exclusion at that time. So we know, so President Ali must now go on the ground. It irks the Starbuck News. He goes on the ground. This is a representative democracy, not a direct. It irks them that he goes to say to the two shows, the circumstances since 2020 has changed. And here is a list of things that we have done to change the circumstances of the Amerindian communities from the days of exclusion under APNU. So all they found that came out of the Two Shouts Council meeting was two things: Chinese landing and the consultations for the amendment, the revision of the Amerindian Act. Nothing else. If you listen to the two shows, we sat there and for 5 days listened to the two shows. Much more came out of that, and Derek John was right about the issue with the Chinese landing. That it's a matter, particularly as it related to Wayne Vera, that it's a court issue. But they didn't hear all the positive things there. So we must not go and say to the Amerindians now, defend the government and say, we've worked hard to change your community. We must not go to the sugar belt and say to the workers there, if the PPP had not got back into government, there would be no sugar industry. You wouldn't have gotten a salary increase because in 5 years it was zero. You wouldn't have had back jobs there. So now we must not defend our record there. Because when we defend our record, oh, it's PPP's arrogance. PPP arrogance. We must let Ramjatan go back on the ground. The same man who said sugar is a black hole, these workers are a waste of time, to go back and lie about us. And when I say that people who believe that are part of the Kool-Aid gang, to say I am cussing the sugar workers and calling them members of the Kool-Aid gang. But there are a few people who believe that, so would believe Ramjatan in the face of all these facts. We can't defend ourselves. We can't go to Linden and talk that more people are working there now than on the APNU. As the IDB report shows, Norton saying unemployment increase, the IDB report showed a drop in unemployment, and they have underestimated it by far. They said it came down to 12% and stuff, but it's even worse in some areas in terms of finding, or better, but worse in the terms of finding people to work. And I suspect in the future, when you see the reports, you will see how, when they do additional surveys, how steeply unemployment has dropped from the days when people they were just losing jobs in droves in many sectors of the economy because of APNU's mismanagement. We must not talk about that. We must not talk about the haters who live every day to point out stupidity all the time about PPP. Oh, we're big and bad about the oil and gas industry. But in 3 years, you've had more reforms and more defense of national interests and more inclusion of Guyanese from the benefits of that industry than the 5 years under APNU. We must not talk about that. I got a slew of people to say to me, oh, you're above that. Why do you have to lower yourself to these people level, Glenn Lal level, and call him a clown and all kinds of things? But he is a clown. Or don't take on Ramjatan or Norton and stuff like that. We have to defend ourselves. If we don't defend ourselves and allow this nonsense to go on, and every week they keep chipping away at it, repeating it, then what sort of party are we? We don't. The PPP has worked hard, and it's not arrogance. We work hard to change the fortunes of this country. And we can demonstrate that over and over. I see another, the city, the cleaning up by President Ali wasn't good enough. Oh, he came out to clean up the city, but in the trench you had some garbage in the trench. Oh, you can't appreciate the effort of the man. And he wants to do something there. Then you, in the city council, Apnu wins the city council, but then our wave don't go and ask Norton, what the hell are you doing about cleaning up Georgetown? So suddenly Ali, oh, don't worry with Ali and this cleanup. He's wasting his time. Never mind people, just like I saw a man cut down several trees, just come off the road, cut down the trees. They said the city council gave us permission to occupy the place by the convention center. Trees that have been growing there for 15 years, flowering trees, they just cut it down off the road because they want to use the parapet. That sort of thing. Everywhere, but they wouldn't blame people, but suddenly Ali tries to clean up. So this is the sort of thing. It's a rewriting every single day, a rewriting and reinvention of the haters and the negative people. They reinvent themselves all the time, all the time. And we're not going to allow them to taint our legacy. We're not going to allow them to taint our legacy. So we'll keep defending ourselves. And the fact is that we have the material to do so. So I'm gonna end there and open up the floor for questions. Yes. So the thing is that the ministry has notified, I spoke with Vikram Bharat about this. It's very clear. He said to me, we have notified them that the block is back with the government of Guyana. They've been notified. The minister said that clearly with me. As far as we're concerned, that is the position. I asked the minister clearly because this is important for us when we move forward, if we do consider favorably the new license to them directly without going through the auction. But as I said before, I don't want to go back and lay out all what I said before. That's the position I did say. I asked him directly and he said yes. Anything to do with this block, the prospecting license rather. If the cabinet decides to work with them based on all that I said before, to issue a new license, not a renewal of the license, but a new license for this block, then all the new conditions would apply. It would be the same as a person coming there for the first time. There would be no carried interest across. Yeah, because there was continuity. They moved from, in the 2016 license that was there, they got a production license in 2016. So they were moving to production. But I thought that's quite clear by now that if you move to a production license, then you can claim, because that's when you have earnings. then you can claim the cost that for exploration as part of the cost back. You can put it in the cost back. If there is no production, then you can't come to the country. Glenn Lal used to say, oh, all of this money is a debt on the country. You will not come to the country and say, we spent $500 million here. So the license has come to an end. I haven't moved to production, so I want back my money. That is what I was explaining. Because that's what he sometimes thinks, but I don't think he understands these matters clearly. So I was just giving an example for him to understand. I was trying to simplify it. Sometimes I try to do that for him. But even then, it's a big nightmare. Okay, okay, yes.
Clarify the state of the movement with respect to the Canopy Block. You have made some comments last week about how the relinquishment happened in 2022.
No. I said it's 2019. I subsequently, after the press conference, I spoke with you on this matter, because when I spoke with GGMC, they said that the first relinquishment took place in 2022. They had it wrong. It was 2019, and so they have been written to that the second relinquishment had to take place. But even if you give the 1 year extension, it would have expired in March of 2023. So they have to relinquish another 20%. And I clarified that after with you.
The government, when it said it announced the approval of the water project last year, said in a press release, talked about how it's actively involved in the preparations and exhaustive development plans to ensure that the projects are consistent with the government's development vision. I just wanted to know with respect to the new Whitetail project, if there are any key inclusions the government is advocating for, like what is not their policy positions?
I can group what our policy concerns are. So now they're reporting about data. The first thing has to do with data. And I spoke at last press conference about that. Timely data. We have fixed that in the new PSA, but we're moving closer to the new PSA arrangements in the licenses, in future licenses, so that you can have more timely data. The second group of concerns relate to safety. Safety in the operations. Thirdly, about carbon footprint, so that they have to demonstrate that the technology is new technology, and we've seen a reduction in the carbon footprint over the period. So these are the three major areas of concern that you would see more attention being paid to in future licenses.
It's not clear just now. You said that with respect to the future license, Exxon's Whitetail license, that you recent legal updates and contract updates in the model agreement would be obligated everything except for fiscal terms.
No. What I didn't say everything. You just said everything. So I'm saying that the conditions relating to timeliness of data and those conditions would be reflected in the new licenses. So although, as we made it clear to everyone that the new PSA would not apply to the Stabroek block, but there are features of the new PSA, given that they are best practices, that we want to bring to the new licenses and put them in the licenses.
Thank
Yes. Yes. Yeah, go ahead, yeah. What's the third one? Oh, okay. Okay, so I saw this letter recently. I guess that's what you're talking about. A letter by Mr. Bagwandin about mismanagement at the Gold Board under the tenure of another Lal, GHK Lal. And so what I found very interesting though is that the Starbuck News took the letter and sterilized it. And if you want to look, I wonder who did that, the editor or so, because in sterilization, what they did, they removed the entire essence of the letter. So they made it look, one word they changed, just a S. For example, in the original letter, it says, under the year in review, 2017, that's the audit report for 2017. All of these transgressions were found. That's the year that GHK Lal was there. Starbuck News changed it to under the years in review, and the title has 2011 to 2019. So under the years in review mean all of the years. So you can't pinpoint that this happened in 2017. You would think, well, it may have happened in the period 2011, 2014 under the PPP. One S. And they changed the entire essence of it and then sterilized GHK Lal, who is a commentator on everything under the sun. But they notice they would not even countenance. People can say anything about Irfan Ali, Jagdeo, anybody in the government. But the same people who are trying to block development all the time, anytime anyone writes a letter about them, they sterilize their names from the letter. That was a very interesting thing I read this morning. It was pointed out to me that, oh, the title was different. I was just preparing for my press conference, which I normally do. So then I go through all the news reports of the whole week and stuff. And I just saw that, and I said, but it's a totally different thing, totally different story from the same letter. And it was done cleverly to do that. So I think we need to deal with this, because these people who are the conscience of the country, and they're above the fray and they know everything about public policy. When you look at their role, I didn't want to mention this GHK Lal, but he came back as a Wall Street analyst. He used to write in I don't know which Wall Street firm he worked with, or it was just a fiction. It would be interesting to ask him that about his tenure abroad. He used to put that on his opinion in the Demerara waves. I see they dropped that now after we brought attention to it. And then conscience, man of faith, etc. And I think he was very dirty in that period, got his hand covered in a lot of grime. And that's what you're seeing surfacing now. We never paid attention to it. I'm glad that this guy, Joel Bagwandin, actually went and dug it up because we didn't have any time to waste being GHK Lal. But Joel Bagwandin dug it up and found a lot of skeletons in his cupboard in the period when he was chairman of the gold board. He's doing a lot of illegal things, breaching a lot of procedures there, paying money out to firms. We haven't even collected back the money from some of these firms. And I think that is what they miss. That's why they're so vile against us. You can see the bitterness in the writing. It's they miss what they perpetrated on the people of this country. They miss it a lot. So JHK, no wonder that he found himself as the star writer for the Kaichor News now. That's why the birds of a feather flock together. So I'm not going to waste my time on that. I don't have that information here. I wouldn't. It's best to deal with the Go Invest. Go Invest will they keep a record of all the companies that have come into the country that go to Go Invest. And they have a record of those that have moved from proposal to actual investment. They have the size of the investment and the sectors that they have invested in, as well as the number of people employed there in that. But that would require like a lot of going over there and maybe have them work through the numbers so you can track it at Go Invest. The third one had, what was this? Huh? Oh, Lane Avenue. I had made some commitments to people at Lane Avenue before the local government elections. So I've been fulfilling all the commitments I made before the local government elections by meeting people back and advancing all the things that I've worked with. So there are lots of people. You know, I met with some farmers, Afro-Guyanese farmers who came here from the East Bank, from Craig area. I went back there on the ground. We met with them. I promised the people in Fowles to go back. We went in Fowles. We did the roads there. Some people from Melanie had come. We went back to Melanie, did the roads. I promised to go into Enterprise. So we went there. We did a number of roads. So it's when you're out campaigning and stuff, you hear people's concerns. And that is the thing, the benefit of a direct engagement with people. Like that so offends the Starbuck News when Irfan Ali does it. It offends them, but it's a connection with people that has always made the difference, because you're busy in office all the time, but when you go out, you hear people's concerns. The same thing happened in Region 1. A lot of people there wanted planting material. We're now working at getting the planting material to some of those communities. In Berbice, in New Amsterdam, we have big concerns about roads. We're going out to tender for 300 roads for Berbice, 100 for the East Bank in lots of communities there, another 300 for the East Coast in all the areas like north of the public road now. That whole area from about Pleasance going all the way to maybe Strasby. The people have been complaining that on that side there's been a lot of focus, so a lot of those things came out of our engagements in the campaign, and we're fulfilling them. A lot of grounds too, like the Pleasance ground, if you look at that, has been done, the Better Hope ground, and in Berbice, that was a big concern. As you saw, after the local government elections, we met with all of the football clubs, the cricket clubs and stuff. Yesterday I met with the Berbice cricket group, and we're now doing over 115 grounds in Berbice. We assigned 400 million, and we're working with those communities. So, the Amerindian communities came out, they raised sports too. They got 100 villages got an allocation for to work with the community on developing their grounds. A lot of that. So it's not just Lane Avenue. A lot has been, we have been doing a lot to fulfill what we discovered when we went out on local government elections. Yes, sure.
Two questions. The first one, now that the Petroleum Act is in place, I wanted to solicit an update from you on the oil blocks auction. I also wanted, you spoke of this before regarding the parts shortage to that, but I wanted to invite your comment specifically on how this is affecting local businesses, particularly since that is a large importer of Trinidad goods, what impact that will have here. And lastly,
So I didn't get that one. That how they
Guyana being a large importer of Trinidad and goods, I wanted to know how the foreign shortage in Trinidad will be affecting
okay.
that transaction. And also, there are new representatives who actually news at the press conference today. I wanted to know what you make of that absence.
I don't know. It could be the caprices of Glen. Huh? You should ask the last one why Kaichor News didn't come today, because I think they've exhausted us in anything useful. We have answered every single question they've had on the oil and gas industry. If they only took the answers and treated them in good faith and reflect them in their articles, they wouldn't have anything more to ask. And the paper is all about that, misleading people. So I think he's worried about the questions when asked here, that I expose what's going on. This newspaper now has always been a rag, but has become even worse now. And it's not a newspaper anymore. This is a party or an individual campaign document. Glenlal has political ambitions, as we all know, so he's using his newspapers to carve out a space for himself. And that is why I think I'm not losing anything by him not coming. I wish he would come sometimes and expose his ignorance, because he does that every time he gets confronted. And I see the newspapers that said he got a self-serving thing, his own newspaper writing about him, and said he's very incisive in his debate on these issues. Pure nonsense. So I don't know why they're not here. One way or another, I don't care, because in any case, when they come here, they go back and reflect a bunch of lies. So it's up to him. They wanted foreign currency, and given, you mentioned, since we are a big importer of Trinidadian goods, but that should serve them better, because if we import their goods, then they will earn, the payments are done in US dollars. So if it was the other way around, we would have probably had difficulty, our exporters, in getting paid here. And a couple of companies approached me and said that they were offered by Trinidadian companies to pay for their imports, that's Trinidadian imports, from Guyana in Trinidadian dollars. And they didn't want to be stuck with this currency. So that's it. Oh, what's the third?
The first one was on the oil block auction.
Oh, the auction. So that will close, I don't know. Next week. So next week it will close. The 12th, I think it's the 12th?
Yeah.
The 12th. Next week is the 12th? Okay. Yeah, please. I can't hear you. Right. Yes, just, yeah. The 50 million. Oh, okay, yes. Well, it is something, they have range houses and a whole some, and many of them, the roofs are falling apart, etc. So when we were talking to people, this was a big concern. So it's about, maybe they're doing the numbers, it's about 300 families that live there, and some really in conditions, because those properties, many of them can't be repaired because people own a small section. So they're beyond the capacity of individual families to repair. So that was the big issue when they came up with, when I spoke with them about some help. It's not a lot of, because there are a large number of people, homes, and so they would be there. I was out also, and there, and in Yarrow, we went there, and they were supposed to complete the road contract in a week after I left. It has not been completed up to now. So I was getting a report, and then the guy said the contractor paid some company that ripped them off, a fake company that ripped them off to supply the concrete. So Minister Indar is there now. I sent him back to ensure that they get the road done, because sometimes you go and the contractors don't fulfill their responsibility, and the communities think that we somehow have lost interest. I didn't even know from the last visit to Lane Avenue and Yarrow Dam. And then people from Sideline Dam, there are lots of them squatting there. We're trying to see, the children have to walk through a lot of mud. There's 71 households there. So we're looking at those to help them, to make sure that the children can come out in those areas too. So a lot of that sort of engagement with that community that took place before the elections and after the elections. Yes, please. Which and again, something I think is is it me I'm not hearing well? Or is it just that next time let's get a louder thing? Go ahead, sorry. Okay, I think there is legislation to deal with solid waste. I don't know exactly if there was a promise to reform it. So I'd have to check on that. One thing I don't want to do though, I don't want to take on every minister's responsibility at the party press conference or in government, because I deal largely with economy, oil and gas, environment and stuff. I don't want to go into solid waste and all of that too much, although eventually we'll do that. But clearly we have been funding the NDCs because that comes up at budget time. So I'm very familiar with that. We're funding the NDCs to enhance garbage collection. For some of the new municipalities, we promised to buy them some of the trucks to pick up garbage. We gave each NDC, well, I don't know, all haven't received us yet, but most have, the tractor and trailer, particularly in the rural areas, so that can enhance. So more than 90% of them would have gotten already, the tractor and trailer that we bought recently. And I think we've done some of the areas, like on the East Coast, I know we develop an area for them to dump to. So I know that they get funding for it in the budget. But I don't know whether you need a separate bill to do a lot of the work that should be done. I believe, from what I'm seeing, let me be frank with you. I've seen suddenly a large number of people, they, like on the East Coast, they would build a caravan and then just bring it and drop it permanently by the roadside. Now we are trying, if you see what's going on, we're trying to plant trees, open up the area, put recreational areas, etc. We don't have a problem people selling. But you can't leave permanent structures by the roadside every parapet you find. You build a caravan or something and drop it permanently there, and without any permission or anything else. Now, this is along highways. So if you now suddenly, we already have an atrocious situation with people dying on our roads for all sorts of reasons. For some are drink and drive, although we have tough laws. Some like unsafe driving, obstacles on the roadway, etc. And then suddenly when they drop these caravans, you have people starting to stop there. They're not as a stoplight or anything, and even it's worse at a stoplight. And then it becomes a problem. And when you talk to people there, they never got permission, but they're offended. So some enforcement action has to take place on these matters. And as I was saying before, people have this view now, they can, once there is a place in front of them, or even if it obstructs traffic, they can just drop anything there. So if we want the country to look differently and the same standards that we all quote as where we should aspire to, we have to change attitudes. And the NDCs have to start looking a bit more at this sort of thing. So it's not sometimes just garbage collection. It is their whole attitude to it. I was in Better Hope, and I said to the chairman of the NDC there recently, or we're fixing the ground. So the ground fell into this. But the whole parapet along that area, just all it requires is just grading the parapet down and just keeping it clean and a brush cutter or something like that. So I said to him, the entire NDC along these areas, you should maintain it. People, thousands of vehicles pass every day here. You have an old drum sitting there, 2 cars that are now moved from 4 years ago, they're rotting in the bush, and that sort of thing. It's a whole mindset thing. And it offends me a lot that people, when you talk to them, some people believe, oh, they're right to keep it there. So we have to approach that in a manner that is sensitive. Because in this country, the last thing we want is heavy arm methods. That is why I was so offended when they sent a notice to the people on the railway embankment at Pleasance Market to move out within 1 week. Because we needed a place in the future, but we have to work with them. We're willing to work with anyone along these roadways, but it's for the country's sake and for their own community. And so that's more important for me than any change in any law. Because law, the only thing you can do is probably increase penalties. But if you do that, then you have to have an enforcement machinery to charge people and to do a number of that. And we don't want to do much of that. We want, by persuasion, to get people involved. Yes. Yeah. So almost every 2 shows. So if you listen to the presentation, because a lot of people are there, including the APA, there are people in there listening. you would see that almost all the two shows were very happy for the LCDS funds, that extremely happy, including those communities where the two shows were members of the APA. They were all happy for it, and they never once said in there, including those two shows, that we don't want these funds or we are trying to block it. But their organization that they belong to, and many are executive members of the APA, they're trying to block it. Even now they're trying to appeal the art decision. So that's why we're saying it's duplicitous. So all the two shows are very happy. They pointed out how they were utilizing the money. Then they came up with some additional concerns. But every year we do that. And then the president pointed out there are some things we can accommodate this year. We can't accommodate all their requests. But in the next year's budget, again, so what they raise here will form part of the program for funding in next year's budget. So that's how we work with them. Now, Murataro, I think in the budget, they came and spoke with us and the last time, and we put money to move the school. It used to be flooded, but that's primary school. When the water gets high in the river, it floods the school. So we're moving the school up to higher ground now in that area. And we have to find, a lot of them are built using their own money from the LCDS funds, because some communities got like $30-something million. That's individual communities. So they're buying like boats, or they're buying maybe an engine to transport the kids. Some are buying minibuses and stuff like that. They're using their own money. But with Meritar, whatever help they need, they will also get. No. This is to higher ground. So it's not flooded when the river. A lot of the river, the settlements along the rivers, they were done at a different time, when we didn't have this climate change and the intensity of the rainfall, and occasionally the river will come high. But now it's almost every rainy season. So it disrupts the activities of the children and the villages. So a lot of the communities don't want to move to higher ground, or they don't have land, because there are nice settlements along the banks of the river. But some have decided now that you have to move, or else every rainy season we'll go through this problem. So we're very pleased with that. So we are helping now to move the village settlements and the infrastructure up a little higher, so that even when the river rises, it doesn't disrupt like the schools and everything else in those areas. So we work with the communities, and we have a long list of demand from these areas. Outside of the individuals, the roads and stuff in the community, we have a number, we explain about what's happening in the regions generally. But I don't want to go back through all of those issues here. And one person from the APA said that, anyhow, let me don't waste my time. APA. Oh, the city council, right. Now the city councils always claim they don't have money. But when you look at once, I think the mayor and the whole infrastructure in the past, the mayor has probably 4 times the amount of security that a minister would have. It's just where they decide the priorities are. And then you saw they don't have audited statements. This was confirmed. They don't audit the money that you collect. If you don't have an audited statement, what does this mean? Either you're not preparing the financial statements to be audited, or you've prepared them and not sent them to be verified. So I don't know if they've even prepared the financial statements. So what follows from that? If you don't prepare financial statements, it means nobody in the country or the city knows how much you collected and how much you expended, from where you collected, and what you expended it on. So that in that kind of circumstance, you can do whatever you want with the revenue because there'd be no record of it. And secondly, you can make expenditure as you wish because there is no record of it. And that's the state that we have in the city council. Once you don't prepare financial statements and have the vouchers and everything to support an audit, then there's no accountability, and people don't understand this. That is why in 1992, when we returned to office, there was over a 10 years gap in preparing accounts to the country. And we made sure that we work to clear the backlog, but also every single year from 1992 to now, audited statements, or we have presented financial statements and they've been audited for the country. If we can do this for the country, restore the country, why can't they do it for the city council? But that characterizes an old PNC sort of management. And then we saw in the 5 years slippages once again. They don't believe that you have to account for resources. We did it for the whole country. That's our track record. Talking about accountability, those who are talking about that too should look at track record on accountability, and then they will see that. So I don't buy this until I see how much money they're collecting and from where they're collecting. You know, we had this discussion already before the elections, that the shaking down of vendors, the selling of land. This week I heard that Solomon Sharma and the council in region in Linden, they're trying to dispose of all the lands along the highway. They have no jurisdiction over the land, but they're trying to dispose of it. The town council there, no doubt they will give a few people to camouflage it, but I heard it's a lot of their politically connected people and the others and friends and family who they're trying to get rid of all their lands, state lands in Linden, because they want a confrontation. So they're doing that now. And so their behavior will not change. This is typical APNU behavior. They will never change in government and out of government. They behave the same way.
Dr. Jagdeo, have consultations commenced on $5 billion?
No, it has not. It has not.
Is the government examining that?
Yeah, we have a lot of proposals, but we have to formally go talk to the people.
Has a decision been made on the replacement of
As far, there is no urgency to that, but the president will address that when he is ready, because right now you have a minister who is from the same ministry who's handling the portfolio. Okay. Yes, so overall, as I said, those numbers are very conservative. I don't think the IDB realize what happened in the 5 years and the starting point, because lots and lots of people lost their jobs. And sometimes when you listen to APNU, and we have short memory, I used to have a daily flow of people, every race, coming into the leader of the opposition office, because we had an open office, talking about loss of jobs and sloth in the economy, no money circulating, things were tough for people, and being shaken down by government ministers, a whole range of stuff. So a lot of people lost their jobs, and then in the COVID period, again, a lot lost their jobs. So the turnaround, which is often hidden between the reporting periods, because if you don't capture starting point, you can't see a dramatic turnaround. They now see a 12% unemployment rate now coming down from 15. But for us, it was significantly more. And not all those people, because of the way we managed COVID, we didn't shut down the country. We kept a dual policy of keeping the country open, limiting the bars to some restrictions and stuff. I met about 50 persons. These are people who were serving in these like the hotels and the other places. They'd lost their jobs. We said, how are we going to get these people to work? They're at home, sitting down, the country shut down totally. We got to get them back to work. So we managed to get people back to work. A lot who were unemployed in the mining sector and the sugar belt and many other areas have now gone back to work because we've changed the taxes. Mining sector especially got a big boost. So we tackled structural unemployment as well as the COVID-related unemployment. Then the new sectors that we started opening up, the new local content laws for the oil and gas industry, the housing boom. We returned to housing, we started building homes. You have about 20,000 people easily who are working on constructing homes now that were not working there because under APNU, that was not being done. There was no housing program practically. And so imagine those 20,000 people that are working only in construction now. And then another 15,000 part-time jobs. So it's tens of thousands of people more who are working today than were working in that time. Now, if you talk to people, it's back. They're looking forward to the future with great prospects. I met a ton of young people at the Building Expo. I'm so pleased that they're looking forward to the future. Even someone 18 years and they're saying, can we apply for a house lot? I say to them, we still have a big backlog, but it's the desire. And they know that ultimately if they stick with it, they're going to get their own house and everything like that in a few years' time. And so it's not so in many other countries in the world. We have a lot of under 25 now owning their own homes, a lot of people. You go to the US and you talk to people, they rent until they're probably 40, 50, they can't afford home. And it's exciting about what's happening in the lives of many, many people. So I think it's underestimated. That is the rate of unemployment now is even lower, and the fall is not 3 percentage points, the drop from 2021. But actually it might be because they didn't capture the 2020 data. Was hard to capture in the 2019, but that was just from 2021. Although we had gotten back a lot of the people to work already, the COVID-related people. So this is a constant worry of ours. That's why we keep pushing, Every time you build a highway, more of our people are working. We award a contract for highway construction of a road. We're doing 10 new schools this year. Our own people are working, building these things.
Last question.
Yeah.
One of
Oh, the central bank has already put out the half-year report a while back. Yeah, you didn't get it? It's in the public domain already.
The Ministry of Finance.
Yeah, it's the central bank report. They put it out. No, you're talking about the one that the minister sends to parliament, but they check the central bank report because it reports on the economy. I don't know how long it came out, but I was going through it as well as the EITI report last. I saw it on my desk. I think it was, today's Thursday, earlier this week. And so I went through those.
No, this is Central Bank website.
Okay, well, maybe I got the advance copy. So, okay. Yeah, good enough.
Will you be able to comment on the implications of the ban on the right data entry for operation falling off to pass the $420 million contributions to workers that are intended?
I can't, yeah, go ahead, right, a little louder.
Will you be able to comment on the Bank of Ghana right data entry for operation falling to pass $420 million? Here has to do with 2020 returning to the job papers.
Oh, I didn't, so I don't know where to check. But once it has to do with workers' pension and contribution, then just like how we promised to keep the NIS going, we will have to make sure that we deal with it too. Okay, we'd have to deal with it. I didn't check it. Okay, thank you very much. Hi, Jason.